Come here. No. Come here. Come closer. I'm not gonna bite. Come here. This is what the creative process looks like sometimes. Chaos. So, here's the situation. This piece that I've been working on for, I don't know, a month and a half, maybe 2 months, this piece is done. It's ready to roll, it's ready to get installed, but the client is not yet ready to have it installed, so it's gonna be chilling for a minute. And rather than dive directly into the next commission, I'm gonna do a little play thing. Because if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times on this channel, I don't think that diving from one major piece into another is a sustainable way for me to run my business. I need to have those kind of mini projects that don't mean anything, that are complete explorations and inventions and just playthings. And so, last night, I began that chaos. I use the word chaos for 2 very specific reasons. First and foremost, because on my video last week, somebody commented that I need to be more serious, that I need to be less silly and lose the quippy asides. My man, I can't be any less me than you are you, and so this chaos is for you. Now, the second reason I use that word is because, well, this process can be chaotic, especially when you don't know what the hell you're looking for yet. So here's what I want to do this week. I want to build a thing, but I don't know what that thing is just yet. And I want to bring you guys along in my process of trying to find a direction rather than just an answer. This is not a problem-solving thing yet. This is I don't even know what I want to make, and I'm trying to figure that out exploration. So where this is going to start for me is at the offcuts, at the chaos of my lumber stacks. And this is a helpful thing to do from time to time because I never throw out the excess material from a project until the project is done and installed and out of my hands. And so sometimes that kind of detritus builds up over time, and it's good to clear that out. And you also sometimes forget what you have in there. You have like random pieces like this, which are weird and different and very, very specific. There's not a lot you can use this for. There's gonna come a time where I look at this and I go, that's why I've held on to this. So let's go shopping in my lumber stacks. So the first thing we need to do is figure out some rough direction. So what I have in mind at the moment is probably some kind of inlaid piece. And I know the scale, or I think the scale, is gonna be somewhere in the box lid panel to cutting board size. Again, I don't know what it's gonna be, but I know it's gonna be somewhere in that. We'll call it maybe 6 by 12 to 16 by 24 inch range. Anywhere in that window I think would fit. So we got a couple of things right off the jump here that I don't think are appropriate for this idea because there's not enough information on them. We've got this beautiful piece of Swiss pear. Swiss pear is a delight to work with. It works with hand tools beautifully and it's got this super subtle grain to it. But that in turn is not feeding me enough information because this piece is not about form, which Swiss pear does super, super well because it's so subtle. This piece is about visual interpretation on a flat surface, and that's a blank canvas, so that's not helpful. We got this big old piece of walnut. Again, there's just nothing interesting about it. It's very What I've been doing on my bench is just pulling things that look interesting, that have some interesting grain about them. That certainly does. Now I've also got my stack of veneers back here, so we're gonna dig that out. These are commercial veneers, so they're thin. We've got some gorgeous, let's get that to focus up. Got some gorgeous walnut burl right there. Just beautiful stuff, and I've got, a couple dozen sheets of it. Got some maple burl here as well. That is, again, also just super, super interesting stuff. Glorious figure, look at that. So we're gonna take a few of these veneer stacks back to the bench and see if those are gonna turn into anything. So, what we have here is something like what I imagine the visual representation of ADHD would look like. I have essentially given myself a myriad of stimuli to choose from, and it's just going to be picking apart, moving things around, looking at things deeply, not just grazing over them, but actually looking at the thing and see if there's anything that emerges from them. So, let's start doing that. As I kind of found this piece of wood right here, which I'm not even sure what it is. It's a maple of some kind, and it's got a beautiful subtlety to the grain. The more I sat with this piece and looked at it, the more it had kind of an ethereal feel to it. It just, something about it feels light and cloudy, if you will. And then I was looking at some other components, like a book match, that I have right here. Now this is silver maple or rock maple, and it is a beautiful piece, but it's very, very busy. And I've never quite known what to do with it because it looks a bit aggressive, right? It looks dangerous, it kind of looks like flames, or in this case, what I saw was a meteor. And those two components together reminded me of a game that I played when I was a kid called Final Fantasy VII. This thing was a big part of my childhood. It is, in my opinion, maybe the greatest game ever made. Of course, I have a good bit of nostalgia for it, so I can't make that claim objectively, but I think this object could be a fun chance to explore that childhood nature of things. I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make a box that somehow represents this game that I loved so much as a young person, and see if I can't do it in a way that both honors the childish nature of the thing, but also explores techniques that are interesting and challenging to me now as a 36-year-old person. So let's start cutting up wood and see what we can do. Guys, this is starting to look dope. I'm starting to get very excited about how this actually looks, and I wasn't sure if I would be, but it's been a really interesting challenge for me creatively to try to figure out how these pieces fit together and to create an image using only wood tones and being very particular about certain things like the grain direction, especially in the cloud image. The grain direction is so vital to this composition working. For example, the blade, the sword, the main component of this image, I think. It was absolutely critical to find a piece where the grain kind of followed the curve of the sword a little bit and then highlighted, you know, on every sword there's a bevel, on every sharp object there's a bevel. So something that resembles that bevel highlight. Things like the arms having grain direction running in different directions rather than just like everything running here or there. The shoulder and the wrist have armor on them in the image, and they're rather aggressive and spiky, and so taking that out of a super gnarly bit of walnut there allowed me to play with not only the grain, but the ripples, the undulations, the figure in that piece. So all of those things matter and how they play off of one another. And then the lettering, which I was unsure of if I was going to do, but I did this sample, and placing it here, I think it fills out the image really nicely. I think it balances this bottom left-hand corner, draws the eye down here, and makes it feel like a complete composition rather than a little bit of inlay on a box lid. So I'm really happy with where that's going. One thing that came up to me this morning as I sanded this sample lettering down is I'm getting a little bit of bleeding, which, I mean, look, I never do lettering in epoxy. It's just not my thing. What I did on this case was I just sealed it with a coat of shellac after the inlay was done and poured to try to prevent that bleeding into the pores, but I'm still getting a little bit of bleeding in there. So I don't know if I just didn't use enough shellac. I don't know if I should have done a second coat. That's where we're at. I'm going to do a second sample of that today and see where that leads. So today, the goal is to get this pocketed out so I can actually set these pieces into the lid. I did a sample pocket yesterday, and so what I learned from this is I did this in the typical way, which is I pocketed out the main area first and then tried to come in and do the outline last to clean it up. And I realized that's not going to work for this. This is why you do samples, because this big open area in the middle here is just making it impossible to get a clean cut around the edges. So what I'm going to do on the main panel, I think, is I'm going to do the outline of all of the positives first. Then I'm going to back that off a little bit and just give myself a little bit of breathing room on there. And then I'm going to come in with a manual router and a large base, and I'm just going to hog that out by hand. I think that's going to be the best way to approach this to give me the best results that I can get. Everything is looking good. I'm very pleased with how this is turning out so far. And we're at a point where it's time to actually glue in my veneers into the marquetry piece. So I think what I'm going to do is just take my time, go one at a time, brush it in, place it in, weight it down for a couple of minutes, that kind of thing, and just work my way down across the board and get this thing nice and clean. And once that's glued in and I can go ahead and sand everything flush and clean it up, then I can cut this to final size. Actually, I got to do my epoxy pour first. So once I do that, then I can cut it to final size, do the rabbets, and move on to the rest of the box, which should take no time at all. But this obviously takes priority given that it is the visual centerpiece of the object. So I am gonna have a beverage and get some glue ready and take my time and do it properly. Join me, won't you?
So that's that, friends. A couple of quick things before I get out of here. First and foremost, I want to thank Shaper for being a partner on this project. This was a tremendous amount of fun. It's just a dumb plaything, but I never get a chance to explore pop art, inlay, different things of that nature in my commission work or my speculation work. So just having the ability to take a little bit of time and do something big and dumb like this, creatively freeing, creatively exhilarating, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. So if you want to learn more about Shaper, you can check out the link down in the description below. You can also find down there links to my new podcast that I have with my friends Mary and Paul. All about design, all about the creative process. Go check it out if you're interested. links to my Patreon if you're interested in supporting my channel that way and joining a vibrant community over on that platform. And of course, merch down below too. If that's what you want to do, you want to purchase some t-shirts and support me in that regard. But for right now, friends, I need to go get some rest because if you can hear, I've got a pretty terrible head cold and I'm powering through at the moment. So I'm going to go relax a little bit, take the rest of the day off. And as always, friends, go get in the shop. Go enjoy it if you can. Go make a thing if you have the opportunity. And I'll see y'all next week. Cheers.